Discover the Our MedTech Lives podcast, where industry experts share their career stories, key achievements, and insights into overcoming challenges in the MedTech field. Hosted by Zilko Rima and Kash Ikram.
Hi everybody, welcome to Our MedTech Lives, and today we are delighted to invite Marco Baiguini, who is a 20-plus year veteran of the medical device industry. He describes himself as a MedTech growth architect, I love that, and is a commercial strategy and transformation expert. Today we're going to talk about a number of things about commercializing med device. He's worked for many large companies, including Straumann and Zimmer. So without further ado, welcome, Marco.
Thank you very much, Kash, for the nice introduction, and Silke for the invitation. Very delighted to be part of this conversation.
Welcome, Marco. As always, we start with our number one question. How did you get into MedTech? We know that your background is biomedical engineering, correct? So why did
That's
you choose
correct.
the MedTech industry?
So I think that the word that I can use here is passion. I believe that I had an early passion for the subject. As you just said, I studied biomedical engineering. I believe that if I go a little bit back before my studies, if you would have asked the young me, what do you want to be professionally as an adult, I would have probably answered, I want to be an inventor. Then later on, I might have changed my answer into I probably want to be a doctor, and I was thinking really surgery. So I guess eventually the two passions found their way into that mix. So that's when I decided to actually study biomedical engineering, and I consider myself very fortunate that I was able to make it a profession and in fact start in the field of medical devices and remain in that field for so many years.
You're still young, Marco.
I know. There's many more years, and that's why
Many more years to go.
Very interested to having this conversation, because one of my core motivation is really to make an impact in this industry that I've come to love and that I love every day more.
Yeah, 100%.
And Marco, I of course looked you up in LinkedIn, that you started as a sales specialist, but then most of the time you spend in marketing. So how did this happen? Because sometimes people switch back, but it seemed that marketing became your real passion at the end, right?
I would say if you ask me, both sales and marketing still live in me very much. In fact, when I think about marketing, for me, marketing, it is a commercial function. The way I have lived marketing and the way I believe marketing can contribute to sales. To answer your question, I did indeed started in sales. I still remember my very first job was out of university of, a new company starting their operation in Italy. That's where I was based at the time. And they were searching for, sales members to join the team. And that was my very, first experience in the industry.
Yeah, Marco, how did you get that job? We were a sales specialist at BTI, right?
Yeah, correct.
How did the first job can always be the hardest, right? So how did you manage to jump into that role?
Yeah, so I was fresh out of university, and that speaks about, you said nicely, 20 years is only the beginning and all of the stuff. But think about 20 years ago, I think that job posting were still on paper. So I might have even found it on one of those job, pages that were published in the newspaper. I replied to that job post. And then, I think the process was very straightforward. I had 2 or 3 interviews. I don't remember exactly. Why did I choose that position amongst the different that I was probably involved at the time? I was intrigued by the fact that that company at the time was really opening their operations in Italy. I believe I was one of the first 5 sales rep, if I'm not mistaken. And that was intriguing because I thought, how often will I have in my career the opportunity to start from zero? So kind of having that startup feeling. I was definitely the very first one to cover the territory. I was assigned, so I had a very strong, let's say, introduction into the market by what does it mean ringing the bell, presenting the company, presenting a product, and then, convincing a customer fresh from
This I find
scratch.
even more unusual because normally when you have zero experience, today they will not accept you anymore that you start from scratch, right? They always would ask you, how did you do it in the past? So that's super impressive that they accepted you as a newbie in the industry to start from scratch.
Well, then I guess I was lucky. Probably time have changed. Surely time have changed. Back then,
But how
it
was the
wasn't the case.
training then? I mean, did you have a mentor or did you just learn by doing the job, or how did it work?
The company was doing intensive training, product training.
Okay.
So I think I can distinguish between, let's say, the product training. There was a formal product training. So we had team members flying from Spain. That's where the company was and is based at quarters. And
Right.
that's when, and I think it was at least 2 times a year we were having a formal training, product trainings. And that's how I got into the technology. And I guess my biomedical engineering training, so I was naturally inclined to and interested in getting all the details, from surface to shapes to mechanical forces. And I understood the topic quite naturally. So I think product training has never been an obstacle. And I must say that this has helped me also in later position when I moved, let's say, areas. Or, if you look at my story, I started and worked primarily in dental, but I then, worked in orthopedics, vascular intervention, and all the time product training has never been a big deal because I am naturally interested and very quick in grasping those aspects. For the sales part, I probably should recognize my area sales manager at the time. He was experienced in the field. He saw me probably as a motivated young guy that wanted to do its stuff in a very diligent way. Maybe still, the university methodology up there. And, I had a lot of interaction. And I think I also stealed some of those best practices that he had, the passion and willingness to share with me. And I guess, and then, I tried a lot. It was a lot of experimentation. I still remember, and I'm not going to go into the details, but one of the things that I had to learn clearly, I remember this feedback is, you know a lot, but you don't have to tell it all in the first sentence. just, think about gates, open the gate that you need, and then
Yeah.
see if you need to open the second one. So I guess it all came along step by step.
And who were the customers that you were selling to? Which area of it?
I mean, dentist. So we were back then, it was primarily private practices. So, I mean, the typical day was I had a plan where I want to go. I had a list of customers. I would ring the bell, introduce myself. If I was lucky, maybe get the 5 minutes elevator pitch. Otherwise, book an appointment and, go back to the next time and so on and so forth. Early days. Later on, obviously, your agenda becomes a little bit more structured. You have customers that are definitely wanting to seeing you. I still remember my very first sale. It was a great moment. I will never forget about it. It was a minor piece of equipment.
Yeah.
But in credit, it gave me, number one, an enormous satisfaction. Number two, amazing to say, probably you have similar stories, but as of then, it's incredible how everything blossomed very quickly, very quickly.
Fantastic. And then you very quickly moved from sales after 3.5 years. You moved into product management and marketing, right?
Yeah, correct.
So how was the evolution from sales specialist to completely different role?
Over the first few years, I guess the company saw my natural inclination towards product and training. So while at the beginning I was obviously on the side of the student, very soon I started to first co-lead some of the training session. Some products I took over, and then I guess that more naturally evolved into an opportunity from the company to join the headquarters. So that's actually after these 3 years being on the field, I accepted an offer to move to Spain and to work with the colleague that was coming over to Italy to give us this training and help him for managing the international market. So I think back then it was still very much focused on the main markets where we had, the historic or the legacy business. and I was more helping out. Obviously, Italy still remained a country that I supported naturally. I knew the team, I spoke the language, and then a few other international marketing, including overseas. So it's been a time where I enjoyed also going to the US, to Mexico, and supporting other entities beyond the ones that I had been part of directly. And then after that, I guess by focusing on product launches, by focusing on product training, sales training, some customer training as well, I started to deviate more towards what you would call marketing, and then jumped formally into a product manager position later on, but this time for a competitor. And therefore, that's when I moved to Switzerland.
That's when you went to Zimmer.
Yeah,
Zimmer.
exactly.
I gotta tell you, this is so coincidental because I went to the dentist this morning, as you can see, blasted my teeth with like a jet, like it was like when you have to clean graffiti off the walls. It was felt like that, and I can still feel it now. Where's the first thing this morning? Technology has moved on massively. So Zimmer, for those who don't know, is a large orthopedic, dental, spinal company now called Zimmer Biomet, right? Because they merged with Biomet a few years back. So this must have been
I think
quite
the dental business is by now spun off, and it became ZimV, if I'm not mistaken.
much different to the one before. What was different
I
about?
think you refer to Zimmer Dental, right?
Yes.
I think it well, I think it was different in various aspects. Certainly, the geographical, obviously being a part of a corporate, you know very well, there's much more structure. I was the product manager for EMEA, and I was specifically responsible for the implant business. Just for those that might not know the industry very well, I mean, it's very typical to have implant business, to have biomaterial business, to have maybe today, depending on the company, they might call it differently, but capital equipment, digital business, which is all about intraoral scanners, milling machines, consumables, or CAD/CAM technologies or softwares, depending on the portfolio of whatever company. In that particular occasion, I started as an implant, then expanded into the digital business. Like intraoral scanner was a big thing, or started to be a big thing back then. So I guess both elements of clear product ownership, or more confined and structured product ownership, and clear geographical responsibility, and sales training as well. In this occasion, it was really massively about the classical product manager that we know from corporate. So really product launches, campaigns, and I was lucky back then because I was responsible for launching a big product that was a great innovation in dental, really something never seen before. Be familiar, if you know orthopedics, about the tantalum technologies and some of the application that it's in orthopedics. And back then, having that technology from the orthopedic business, it was translated into the dental, and Europe was going first to market. Maybe today the situation is a bit different. FDA path sometimes are easier and faster than MDR approval. So maybe, but back then it was a very traditional, or a very common path to say C first and then FDA after. So it went through first market. So I had that pleasure and experience to go first market with a completely new product, and what all that it mattered. So, from telling the story to collecting first clinical evidence and so on and so forth, which has also framed another great experience from me.
Marco, let's talk about a little bit today about today.
Sure.
Just out of my curiosity, you present yourself as MedTech growth architect, as Cash introduced you already. What is the meaning of this?
I like to think about myself as somebody that can help organization in architecting their growth. What does that mean? Is building a new business, or growing an existing business, scaling an existing business. In my career, I have been fortunate of having different occasions where that happened. For example, when I was at Straumann, it was early days of the digital business, new technology coming to the market. And my job was really to design and help the organization build the sales and after sales team that supported that. More recently,
How do you think sales has changed? I mean, when we all started, I think we are all like 20 plus years in the industry. It was mainly in-person visits, right? So, and now you say this is not longer the appropriate approach. How do you see that change today?
So, and what my experience has been so far is that sales probably has not changed from the past, or not to the extent I think it could have changed. So if I'm very honest, I don't think sales in our industry has changed too much. It's still heavily based on the sales rep in whatever form visiting customer and having that conversation face to face. Don't get me wrong, I still believe this is an essential piece, and I'm not suggesting that that should be stopped. What I feel, however, that should be happening is that the industry could embrace more of other forms of sales. To be concrete, a sales rep doesn't have necessarily to be only somebody that travels to the customer and entertains that conversation being physically at the hospital or the clinic. For example, it could be an inside sales rep. So it could be somebody that has the exact same job but operates as we are having this interaction remotely out through using technology to having a conversation that can be as profound as the one that you can have in person. This is one way I see an alternative.
Don't you think that COVID times did change that? Because I see more and more that it's accepted by customers that you, at least at the beginning, to have a screening call to see from both sides if this is a product they would consider, that they normally agree today on a hybrid approach.
I definitely COVID has changed our interaction modalities beyond, let's say, the MedTech sales practices. So obviously having this conversation it's very common. Nobody is uncomfortable. I remember the days we were closed by COVID. It all came by surprise. And I was back then, heading the marketing department. We had a huge congress lined up for exactly the same week. The truck was almost on the way to the fair, and everything changed. So all the programs had to be reverted online, and it was kind of okay, let's do it. Nobody had a clear experience. So yes, the answer is yes. COVID has changed it. I believe that everybody, including HCPs or professional in various forms and other stakeholders that are involved, and depending on the product we are discussing, are definitely accepting the modality. What I don't see yet is the maturity of it, is the intentionality of it. I feel and I observe that it is more of a tactical approach rather than a strategic decision, if it makes sense. And that's where I love the conversation of how can we make it a structural part of the business model. How the go-to-market model is fundamentally designed to include the hybrid sales approach as a fundamental element, not just as a tactical that happens because some people are experimenting or because some people try it and it is somehow accepted. How can we formally make it part of the sales process and scale it in a way that it's measurable and that eventually delivers value for both the customer, which obviously for me is the number one tension, but also the company? And how do we prove this as something sustainable and that generate value? Going back also to the growth question you had before.
So if a company like today wants to go, I mean, I was part of a Medtronic. We set up an inside sales organization. I think that was the first steps into going digital and the digital transformation. So if you're a company today that's purely, let's say, analog, so you hire sales reps and they visit the customers, how do they start a successful digital transformation? What does that look like for the MedTech commercial team? And what should they be creating? What should they be investing in? What does that journey look like?
So, in my opinion, there are two fundamental things that I believe are a good starting point. The number one starting point is that you need to have a clear understanding and articulation of what's the problem that you want to solve. So what is it that you want to achieve, and therefore what is it that you want to achieve? So in my opinion, you need to articulate a very clear.
Of that could be.
Sorry?
Examples of that is we have too many customers, right? And the sales reps can't spend enough time in let's say, it's the 80-20 rule, right? Pareto. They spend 80% of their time in 20% of their customers, which is good. But 80% of our customers don't see enough of us as a company, for example, right? That could be one of the problems that you're trying to solve.
I can reframe it as you want to
Mm-hmm.
increase your focus, right? You want to make
Right.
sure that and optimize the time of your sales force, because probably it is one of the most precious, let's say, assets that you have as a company, certainly in the team. So if you want to do that, for example, you can think of how are those sales reps spending their time today, and you probably come down to those figure. I mean, the 80-20
Yeah.
is a good
Yeah.
approximation. Maybe it's different.
The friends and family program, right? They go see their friends and family, right? The people they're most friendly with,
I
right?
mean, this is, I love sales. Huh? I've been a sales rep myself, so I'll never speak bad about my dear friend sales. But let's go down that narrative. And for sure, yes.
Yes.
I mean, it's very easy to go and to the ones that you will get time. You probably know you get. It's very hard as a sales rep to go to those that have said no multiple times, or that have somehow delayed that conversation. So I have lived it on my skin, and I totally empathize with that. So if that is the so this is a problem for sure. I mean, this is something that everybody has faced in different scales of pain. Reimagining your sales approach in that sense could involve, for example, accepting that some of your customers, not all of your customer can have the same share of your time. So a good segmentation could be a very good point. So do you have a clear understanding of how your sales force is spending time with their customer, and also not just hopefully for because the friends and so that you mentioned, but also what it is those customer value, if I can call it that way. And then if you have that a clear segmentation, and you understand the customers that you have, what is their value, the customer that you don't have, then you can make what it is their value, then you can make a conscious decision. And for example, you could say, look, I know it's painful, but I want you to go move part of the time that you're currently spending with lower value customers to go and chase for the higher value customers, because that's where we win, that's where we grow. At the same time, we don't want to lose those ones, and also maybe others. So how can we address them? And then maybe technology, so digitalization, maybe there is an opportunity for self-service, certain things that you do when you visit. Fair enough, it's relationship building. I'm not discounting the importance of that, but maybe do you really need to do it every month? Do you really need to do it with that frequency? Maybe certain things can be delegated to a system, or maybe we can think of, as you have quoted from your experience as well, maybe we can institutionalize an inside sales team that actually targets all the, let's say, lower tier customer segments, and therefore ensure that those customers are served, that they have sometimes even more interactions, because they are just a call away rather than having to book an appointment. And in certain geographies, it might even be a very long travel. And then all that time that somebody else is taking care of, somebody or something else, because sometimes it can be systems, then you can riff on doing that visit. I know it's painful, I know it's difficult, but then you have the time, so you don't have more excuses in a way,
Yeah.
right?
So
You
you're
need to face
sending
it.
your reps to hostile accounts or competitive accounts, or those accounts have high value, right? That you need to win if you're going to grow your business in a certain volume or in a certain strategic direction, right?
Correct.
Right. Silke,
Or
you
maybe for the other product. Sorry, Silke, to
yeah.
interrupt. Or sometimes it's customer, sometimes it's product. You don't cross sell, because that's always a conversation you don't want to have. You're not comfortable. Maybe you should have it. Sorry, Silke.
No problem. When we are talking about all these changes and we try new strategies, you said we should not have tactics, it should be a strategy. Which KPIs would you suggest that we can measure this success as well? When would you call it successful?
So if we are talking about, let's say, a digital transformation or an hybrid sales transformation, I mean, the ultimate KPI in sales is obviously sales. So, I mean, you want to see that you are indeed growing whatever matrix you have defined, whether it's just revenue, whether it is cross selling, or whether it is market share. I mean, every company might have different targets or sales targets different in different moments. So set aside that for me, sales is always the ultimate KPI. I think when we look at transformation of this kind, you also need to look at something that it's a little bit underlying the figure. I mean, without that figure, nothing happens. I agree. But sometimes you need to be also looking at other supporting elements. For example, the second one that comes to mind, and it's not necessarily in order of importance, I actually think it is very important, is customer satisfaction. Are your customer happy or happier? Are you see the value of?
How do you measure customer
I mean,
satisfaction?
there is one very popular way, or let's say formal way, could be net promoter score. You can have those net promoter score interviews. So how likely are you to recommend us as a company or whatever to a colleague? The very traditional on a scale 1 to 10, right? So this is a very formal accepted way. So you can run it and see how that evolves. What I have also found interesting is having conversation. I mean, have an open conversation. Are there those customers finding the information that they want? I mean, you have that relationship. You can have a more, let's say, informal, if you will, conversation, and maybe you can structure it in a few questions around, we have just recently launched Inside Sales Rep. Is it a modality that you find convenient? Is it working for you? What it's not working? So you're establishing that dialogue, depending on what exactly you want to measure. I made the example of the Inside Sales Rep. Maybe you've launched a customer portal where all the information that the sales rep used to send via email or just go and bring in person, now it's can be downloaded. Is it functioning for you can have those type of measurement, and this is how, in my opinion, doing it structurally and consistently over time, you can see, are we moving the needle? What are we hearing back from the market?
So for those uninitiated, what's an inside sales rep?
So my definition of an inside sales rep is a sales rep. I will make it very simple. A sales rep without a car. So is exactly a sales rep as we all know it in the industry. So somebody that owns a territory, and within the territory, a number of accounts, and that is responsible for a specific portfolio. Whether your company has one or multiple products, depending on that, it might be that you have different sales team, and whose job is to sell that product or group of products to those accounts in the territory is being assigned. So an inside sales rep is exactly that. But rather than meeting those persons by traveling to their office or hospital or whatever that is, we'll meet them as we are now over a video call or over the phone, and having that product conversation, sales version, whatever stage you are, you are presenting the product, you are making a quote, or you are resolving a problem digitally, even demoing a product,
but Marco,
depending on the product that you have.
Let me ask you something.
Please.
I mean, you talked about customer satisfaction before. Let me be a little provocative, right? I would say, I guarantee you, the moment a sales rep is handing you as a customer over to an inside sales rep, the customer satisfaction goes down. How do you overcome this resistance?
So first of all, I'm not sure the customer satisfaction goes down. I'm interested also to your experience.
Let me just go a little step further. By handing over, the customer sees he's going down in the ranking because he knows he's not an A or B customer anymore when the sales rep is not coming to visit him.
First of all, I would do so. I would do it in a I don't want to say smart way, because obviously, but let's say I would do it in a thoughtful manner. This is not an occasional transition. There is a planning, and there is a clear story, which means there is a clear message if need be. What I mean by that is that you know your customer, and you know already what the pace of visit and volume of business it is. I would probably not start from from a customer that can trigger that immediate reaction. The way I have managed those transition is obviously with a very, very close collaboration with the local team. This is not something that you can handle. My very first advice is, don't handle it as an HQ initiative from the ivory tower where, this is how it looks on the paper, this is what you need to do. Engage in a very thorough conversation with the local management and with I would advocate for having the area sales manager into it as well. Go down, really down to the field. For me, by the way, open and close parentheses very quickly, area sales manager is a critical function. It's probably the most important sales function I can imagine, because they know the customer, they own the relationship. They don't know just the business numbers, but they really understand the personality. So when you have that clear picture in mind, you probably have a large number of accounts that still are not visited as much as you think they are, and are probably also not they don't have that strong relationship with the person. As a consequence, and for many reasons, the person doesn't go, the territory has been vacant, the account is recently acquired, or whatever. There has been a change in the account for whatever reason. So there are so many multiple reasons. So it's not easy, but it's very plausible that you will be very soon coming up with a list of customers that are, let's define them, low risk. That's where you start. That's where you prove your model. That's when you gain, that's your gym. That's where you basically get comfortable coming from a very different model. And then once you've proven your success there and you've made some mistakes, and maybe some customer will be disappointed, and it's a low risk conversation to go back if you need to go back, or it's a open conversation to say, no, that's how it works now. Maybe not a pleasant one, not an easy one, but still a reasonable one. So that planning element, and that planning element is also the story. You need to be clear internally and potentially externally on why you're doing it, why that change happens. And if you do have that story, then I guess you are, and that story can be very positive. It's not just, we want to save time of our sales rep. Some customer, in my experience, are visited very seldomly. They are very far from the very next sales rep. And despite we would be wanting to be there, we can say, look, the only way for us to be there more often is to have you this way. In this case, you can have somebody at your disposal every week, every 2 weeks, whatever is the commitment you can actually make. And you are showing that you are there more than you were before. So, and still you can say for specific queries, maybe somebody will still come over. It's not a black and white game in my mind. It is more of a very tactful, strategically driven approach to the execution.
I mean, you said that you would encourage every company to use multiple channels, but I know that you also say that using multiple channels is not the meaning of omnichannel sales. So what is the definition of omnichannel?
Yeah, I'd love to know what we talk about omnichannel a lot. So is that what you're gearing up to? Is that omnichannel that you're heading toward?
Yeah, I'm a fan of omnichannel, and I explained why I'm also, picky, if you want me, if I can say so, in the definition versus multi-channel. So for me, there is a fundamental difference. So multi-channel is having multiple channel to market. A sales rep is a channel, your website is a channel, and you might have an e-commerce as another channel, and we can go on with the list. So multi-channel means that fundamentally there are multiple ways, but these avenues are potentially siloed, independent one from another. Omnichannel, in my definition, and I believe in a more general definition, is the orchestration and the harmonization and the interconnected nature of this channel. So it's an intentional approach of making sure that these channels are working in a coordinated way and that they are integrated. The way I'm seeing it is you put the customer at the center, you activate a number of channels, whatever it's appropriate to your business, and then you make sure that no matter which channel the customer is interacting, the story is consistent. And ideally, you would want the customer to transition from one channel to the other. Let's take an example from something that has nothing to do with the industry, but as individuals, we probably experiment. Today, if you need to, let's go to more the generic goods. If you are interested in a product, very likely you start your journey on the internet. Let's say you want to buy a bicycle. I don't know. I just bought a bicycle, so the information comes, so the example comes to mind. So I started by researching, okay, what bicycle I want. Then I went to the website and then found the dealer, and then connected with the dealer, and then eventually went to the shop. It was ideally what you want is that you start your journey in a place, and when you move to the next place, that journey remembers what you have done already. It's not just, okay, this information I got, now I need to restart from scratch to the next one. So when I enter the shop, I would like that the person knows that Marco has already visited the website, inquired about that particular product, and when I enter said, hey, I know, Marco, that you've been looking at model one, whatever. This is what we have in store. Do you have other, that is the seamless transition that I mean. The other element is that by doing that, customer is really at the center. So what I like to say is that customer have what they want, when they want, and how they want. Maybe maybe I like to look about new products only in the evening. That's when I have time. Or maybe early morning for whatever reason. I don't have the time for another appointment in the corridor. Or maybe I'm somebody that likes the website versus maybe Cash, you are somebody that likes to get it on an email. So if the system can also remember your preferences, they will serve the same purpose the way you want, that is different from the way I want. And maybe Silke still wants to see the rep. Perfectly fine. I'm not arguing against, so it's not one. So for me, this omni-channel element is really about the orchestration, the continuity that requires a sort of awareness from the system, is data collection, so that in a way, the entire infrastructure understands who I am versus who Cash is and versus who Silke is, and then delivers accordingly. That's the next level. So it's not just about one or the other tool or multiple tools. It's about the ecosystem, and I hate the word ecosystem, but I guess it's appropriate in this in this circumstance of something that is structurally working for the same objective.
And
Does it make sense?
Marco, what do you suggest for the leaders in MedTech? How do they prepare themselves and their team for the future, seeing all these changes on the horizon?
So for me,
Question.
is so my message to the leader is the market, and specifically the medical devices industry, is definitely going through a change, or has been going for many years through a change. In my opinion, there are a few that are more significant than other. One is customer expectation. I think that customer have come to a point where their expectation in the way they are served is a competitive advantage. I think that a fundamental shift is acknowledging for those leaders that how you sell is becoming increasingly more important, and it's not anymore enough to think about what you sell. So the industry has been very, very good in thinking of another great product, and they should continue to do that. But the value proposition cannot only be this product is better than this, or this is a new technology, greater technology. Also, how we sell needs to become part of the discussion and the differentiation. I am convinced that if a company sells in a different way from another, creates a better customer experience, the customer is obviously, if the product is good, might be inclined to go there rather than staying wherever they are. So that is the first realization, customer expectation. Customer access might also be, especially on the HCP level, might be also limited. I mean, we know how big is the workload in an hospital setting, but also in private settings. So, expecting that they will have time for those conversations to be shorter. There is a multitude also of stakeholders. Compared to the past, probably, the HCP conversation was enough. Now you need to, especially in more complex environments, you need to have, other administrator, procurement, payers, and so on and so forth involved in the decision. So these conversations are and not all of them might give you that 5 minutes. So the customer element is something that I think leaders should be embracing on a deeper level. I would also make the argument of cost. I mean, obviously there is a cost pressure, and we all want to deliver on that one. And there are ways that where you can optimize, make it more efficient, if you will, your go-to-market model by embracing tools or ways that are consuming less time of your people and refocusing those people, as we were starting from, where there is the highest return on your time invested. It's something that needs to be. Then there is a technological proliferation. I mean, we have tools that we didn't have just a few years ago. I mean, AI is coming. You see more and more conversation around AI agents, so software that can do stuff, not only chat with you. So my conversation is, look at these buckets. Maybe you don't have to address all of them. What it is the biggest pain point that you need to solve. Make an assessment of where your company is versus where you want that to be, and then initiate from very simple thing. I mean, you cannot get to the end of the process if you are still lacking the basics. So for example, if you don't have the ability to collect data, or if the data that you have are, modest or no quality, then I mean, there's no AI that will fix it. If you're not having conversation with your sales team, if the sales and marketing team are not, communicating together, there's no marketing automation tool that will fix it. Also look at your dynamics. Do you have a clear understanding of how your team roles and responsibility are? Do you have clear processes and ownership? Fix that basic within your vision, and then implement solution that might accelerate the transformation or make it easier, or sometimes make it scalable. I always say it's not the CRM that will make you a data driven. Maybe a simple Excel. And going back to my early days, my CRM was a booklet, but it was consistently filled. I'm not saying that it was properly done or nicely done, but it was at least consistent. So I could look over and over those data. Maybe I was missing key data, but it's easier to add another data point than having no data in a way, or a consistent, and then make it part of the conversation. In my opinion, when you as a leader are asking for such a, then you need to use for such a transformation, that you need to use it. For example, if you are so obsessed of data, then make sure that those data are part of the conversation, are part of your weekly review with the sales team, if you are an area sales manager, or are part of your monthly review with the management team, or maybe of your quarterly review with the CEO. The same data. I mean, maybe not the same dashboard. It might be different granularity, but the same data, because otherwise, how do you consistently showcase that what you are measuring moves the needle? These are hopefully articulate the problem, set the vision, identify where you are with your situation, and then, role model whatever you want to achieve in a consistent manner, and give it a bit of time. I mean, change doesn't happen one day to the next.
Data is key, right? So some of this data is automatically collected by the company, like the sales results, etc. But a lot of the data is still analog, right? It still has to be punched in by people, collected and analyzed and put into the system, right? And that's, I think, where buy-in from the organization is absolutely key if you're going to get the data absolutely correct, right? So, where are the sales reps? Who are they visiting? What's the frequency of their visits? That data is analog. That has to be put in somehow by somebody, right? And
Yeah,
that's where the sales reps,
and that's, for me, you're touching a very important point. And I immediately want to start from what I believe I don't like. And that is this idea that because you can measure, then you need to measure.
right.
There is a temptation, especially from technical teams, that because it's possible, then let's collect all of this. I have seen marketing forms that have too many fields to be filled in. And then we have all been at a congress or a trade show where the customer comes and you have few minutes. You are not bothering them with too many questions. So let's also be intentional with the data that we measure, because they are so important. Let's focus on the one that really move the needle. And it might be that you leave out some of them. In my opinion, there is two categories of data. There are functional data, which are, helpful to understanding is the process, the system that we have put in place, or systems that we have put in place working. And these are for let's say, the ones that run the operational element of it. And there are business data that are around, is the customer engaging, yes or no? Is gone to this event, engaged with that content on the website, has opened that email? And then how fast was if there is a signal and that signal went to somebody in the team that had to do a follow-up call or whatever action, how many of those actions have been completed, in which time frame, and then what happened next? So these are business data that are driving, in my opinion, the sales. And these are the ones that you want to look at as a functional leader or as a manager overarchingly to assess if the process is actually delivering on your promise.
Interesting. All right, let's talk about those functional leaders or those commercial people. Is the current talent that's been doing the MedTech sales for the last 15 years the same talent that you're going to need for the next 15 years? Or how is there a talent challenge in this equation?
I mean, I think there is a talent challenge.
Right.
let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Grab the nettle.
Because I believe that, at least in my experience, there are two categories, or at least two categories, maybe three. The one that are, it's impossible, this is how sales worked.
Yes.
My customer, I know them very well. They will never accept anything like that. And in my opinion, some of those are also the ones that oftentimes believe that if they move, the entire company collapse and all customer will switch, which I seldomly have seen, unfortunately, or fortunately for the company. There are the ones that are yes, but, and typically the but is always does all but for the others, not for me. Like, of course,
Yeah.
not with my customer, not with my product, not with something that it's to do with me. And there are the ones that are obviously open for it. Now, speaking of on the positive side, I think I don't have a silver bullet, but what I believe that moves the needle is upskilling on one end. People can be upskilled, and even the more resistant one have been upskilled. They are probably, even if they are fundamentally selling as maybe 20 or 30 years ago, they have still had to learn a new product, a new team, a new manager. So they can change that one as well.
Mm-hmm.
Customer have changed. I mean, and they probably are already doing video conferences and without realizing it, as a tactical thing that we were mentioning earlier. So probably they just need to see that reality. The company probably needs to spend significant time in making sure that they understand. I know that there are still reps that are not even comfortable with using Excel or the likes. So I do appreciate that it's not necessarily straightforward, not to mention CRM, certainly. And then, look, there is renovation anyways. So my advice would be also to look for talents that are of this new generation in a way. For example, I have experienced myself having interacted and I had a lot of hiring conversation with inside sales rep that some of those profiles were naturally, maybe because they had been inside sales already, much more open. So that gives me the confidence that beyond the inside sales rep that I was dealing with, that there is plenty of salespeople that have that mindset already. And probably you will, I'm not suggesting that you need to change the one you have, but maybe one will change, go to a higher position, go to another company, unfortunately, leave the industry for whatever reason. There will be a vacant territory. Maybe there is a chance to bring fresh air in that space. So I think there is an organic way of renovation that will happen, and that is definitely another area. And then, I mean, the company, let's not underestimate that leadership needs to role model this. I mean, they need to be the one that are not just requesting the change, but making the change themselves. So showing, defending those situations, giving space to people that have embraced it and maybe successfully managed it. Give them stage, invite them to, whatever activity, communicate about that change not in a naive positive manner, but in a positive manner based on, okay, Cash has done it. Here is the spotlight in the next newsletter or in the next sales meeting, 10 minutes of or whatever session only about best practices on whatever is been done there. So give space for these things, not just, for the usual. Otherwise, I don't believe change will stick, or it will be very painful and long.
It seems that you can be retrained. Isn't that good news?
Yeah, so nice. Thank you so much. This takes me to the last question, Marco. As someone following us for a while, I mean, I would normally say, what are the three things you know now that you wish you would have known then, or your recommendations to your 20 years younger Marco? But you can also say what you would recommend to the young Silke, who doesn't know how to embrace the change.
Look, for sure, I would say to my younger me that this is a marathon. It's not a fast race. Was very much into, I do this, I need to get this result, and then this is the next step, and relentlessly expecting to hit the center every time. In the marathon run, not that I have ever run a marathon, for full disclosure, but
you're a cyclist, right? So
well, I'm not a cyclist. I'm an occasional cyclist, but let's say
so the This is then the Tour de France.
Okay.
But the marathon analogy for me is more of having in mind the long-term goal, accepting that over the course you obviously have a direction and you have probably a few milestones that you want to consider, but it will not be just a smooth constant run at a steady pace. Maybe I'm wrong for the marathon. A passionate will say it's obvious that you've never run a marathon, but it serves the analogy. I hope that there might be moments where you are probably faster, slower, more energetic, less energetic, need to change your plan because things happen. And therefore, I would say to that young me, it's not a failure. It's part of the process. Don't get too nervous about it. And so I see it in this kind of transformation. There will be setback. There will be moment where you also need to admittedly go in a direction and say, hey, this is not working. Let's admit it's not working. Let's change strategy. There is no point of insisting it. So get comfortable with the fact that sometimes you will be uncomfortable, number one, and be also relaxed about it. It will happen. It's not a failure per se. It is rather part of the process. Embrace it. Move on. Don't lose time about it, and don't overthink about what might other people think about it. It is something that probably others have experienced, and moving faster to the next step is probably wiser than just stay here and overthink it. So these are the 2 or 3 things that I would say to myself, and
Fantastic.
probably I have already said to myself in the meantime.
You have to repeat it to yourself. Marco, listen, thank you so much. Organizational change is really hard, as you've laid out. There is the hardware aspect of it. There is the strategic operational part of it. And then there's the people part, right? And you have to be, strategic architects like yourself come in and help to manage all the aspects of change that an organization has to go through, like going into an omni-channel type situation. And I think it's coming. Digital and omni-channel, as we've seen, is coming. A lot of the big companies are trying it out in various, but it's coming because the customers expect it. The customers want it, right? And, you can't be King Canute and hold back the tide, because the tide is coming in, whether you like it or not. And the industry needs talented people like yourself to bring this reality to now, so that this is going to be the way that we operate in the future. So it's been super insightful. Thank you so much for bringing these ideas and your experiences to us. And we really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Thank you again for the invitation. Thank you both, Kash and Silke. I hope that, as I said at the beginning, my motivation is really to make an impact in the industry. I'm deeply passionate about it. And if that is one way of contributing, I'm obviously all in for it.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning into our MedTech Lives. You have been listening to Zilka Riemer and Kash Ikran. We're committed to bringing you insights and stories that inspire and inform the medical community. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with your network.